Ask the Experts platform is a monthly segment that offers an opportunity for Namibian journalists to engage noted experts in one-on-one discussions on the COVID-19 pandemic. Journalists get to pose questions to experts in various sectors to ensure that they are equipped with the necessary information to better inform their readers, listeners, and viewers. COVID-19 is our common enemy. Together, we can defeat it. Proudly brought to you by the Namibia Media Trust and the DW Academy.
Good morning and welcome once again to another session of Hashtag Ask the Experts. Now, this platform has been made possible by the Namibia Media Trust and the DW Academy to give an opportunity to journalists to speak directly to the experts as it pertains to all things COVID-19 related. Now, this morning, we have another session, of course, and we'll be talking about support best practices by employers. And our experts joining us for today's conversation is Ms. Mauriza Fredericks, who is the Manager in Communications for social responsibility at Old Mutual. And we also have Edwina Mensah Husselmann, who is a clinical psychologist as well as founder of Geluk Psychological Services. And then, of course, we have Selma Moses with us this morning as well, and she is our sign language interpreter. So good morning and welcome to our guests and to Selma, and of course to all the participants on our live this morning. If you do have any questions during the sessions as a participant, do feel free. Just raise your hand and you can ask either Mauriza or Edwina your question directly. If you're watching via Facebook, you can leave us a comment in the comment section and we will filter the question through to our guests this morning. But without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. Edwina, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think we can start to talk about, how COVID-19 affects employee productivity as well as the employee's mental health. Mauriza, talk to us about how, COVID-19 has affected, yourself and the employees of Old Mutual.
Thank you very much. I must say I'm one of the very few people. I have not had COVID, and I count myself blessed. And I have been fully vaccinated also. So I think that is the spirit and that's the way to go. But when it comes to COVID-19 and employees, I think it's important for us just to mention that Old Mutual has actually put our employees amongst the top 5 responsible business pillars of our company. So we have 5 business pillars, and they consist of our customers, the community in which we do business, the environment in which we do business, because the nature and the environment must obviously be well and clean and sustainable, and then being a responsible investor, which is the core of our business. And on that list, number 5, we have employees that we really consider very important. Now, their emotional health and their wellness, their physical well-being is obviously very important. And without employees that are healthy and equipped to work with your customers, your business won't succeed. And therefore, our employee proposition, like I said, is of great value to us as a business.
Yeah. And what is the new normal for you guys? What does that look like?
Well, I must say that with the introduction of COVID, we actually place in general a high emphasis on business resilience. So every year we do this business continuation simulations that help every business unit to prepare for any eventuality. And in November 2019, we actually went through a simulation, just before the December holidays. It was painstaking. It wasn't an easy exercise. You have to come up with a plan and ensure that in the event of a crisis, how well will your your business unit respond? And all of this was submitted. We went through the simulation. It's very detailed. It even talks about, should we not be able to go back to office, where will the business be running from? How many laptops would you need? What type of data would you need? You know, desks and everything, telephones, how many people work from home? How many are at the office? And here we are, come 2020. At the press of a button by February, we could basically implement our business continuation plan, which we set up the previous year. So you were asking me about what does the normal look like for us? How do we experience it? It was at the press of the button that we could continue. And, you know, looking back now, I realize how dynamic the environment is that we are in. And that business continuation plan made provision for employees as well. So the transition to where we were, where we're currently functioning from, was proactively planned. And we obviously needed to up our technological innovation as well to help us track with the digital processes and put, you know, from one-on-one engagement now into a face-to-face interaction kind of a model. But we've managed to go online by March 2020, and we've been working from home since then. So it's become part of our daily lifestyle, I must say, and we have adapted very well according to a recent survey we've done amongst employees.
That's really commendable. I mean, this business continuation plan that you had the foresight, you know, to implement, you know, to kickstart rather the year before COVID was even a thing. What prompted the, you know, the development of this plan, Mauriza?
This is part of our business strategy. We're in the financial service sector. And for us, it's important to have business resilience, meaning we should always be able to service our customers. There should never be an opportunity when we are offline. If for a better, just for a lack of a better word. So business continuation means it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow, business must continue. And this is an annual exercise that we do every year, October, November. So it was nothing new. It's just that that specific simulation we did, we basically imagined something else. We thought it was a bug. You know, some of the staff, we had to come up with a plan. Some of the staff maybe had food poisoning. 50% of them couldn't come to work. Now they're in hospital. How will we respond? How will we be able to still support, you know, the client-facing employees? And all of those plans were put in place. It's currently in place. And as we go through this whole process, week by week, the crisis committee manage the feedback we obtained. And then we are required to update our business plan as we obtain the feedback. So just to give you an indication, for example, we've put in place, back to the employee, and that's why we're here today, we've put in place psychological support. We launched bulk SMSs and made sure that every employee across the country, and we are positioned in all 14 regions, have access to psychologists who could give them telephonic support for them and their entire household at the cost of Old Mutual. That was the Human Capital Department's plan of action. And so none of our employees, as they were transitioning into this new workflow, this new culture of working from home, were just left on their own. They could call a psychologist in their region and they could have a conversation, and their family members, their children, could all participate with at no extra cost. We also had weekly webinars where we had various conversations about adapting to your new environment, parenting from home, you know, working from home while overseeing your children. We supported them with financial conversations about budgeting, and really to ensure that they are equipped, emotionally stable, mentally fit to still deal with the everyday demands, deadlines, meetings, while also tutoring kids from home. So we were very close in contact, and we are still close in contact with our employees.
That's really fantastic. And we'll get into, you know, how the employees have responded to these programs that you've set up for them in a bit. But I do see that Edwina has been able to join us. Edwina, good morning and welcome.
A hearty good morning, Nina, and the rest of the team. It's a pleasure to be here. I trust that you can see me proper and hear me as well.
Yes, we can hear you just fine, Edwina. Well, we've gotten the ball rolling on the conversation this morning, but just to bring you into the conversation, Edwina, perhaps you can talk to us about how COVID-19 affects the productivity and the mental health of an employee.
It does have a positive and a negative effect depending on the particular employee. Many is dependent on our personality. So those that are more introverted expressed that they are more happier working from home in their own space, getting more work done, for example. And others that are more leaning towards extroversion miss that bonding, that atmosphere, the buzz, the stimulation of the energy, the collective energy. So working from home and the COVID-19 pandemic challenged us for some new ways, method, devising, engineering of sustaining our mental health and our productivity in terms of not only work and surviving, putting bread on the table, but also in terms of our nurturance of ourselves and the collective. So like now we had to employ virtual platforms, and some fossils like me, it's quite a challenge to adjust. That means to cope with these new ways of so-called living. And we desire and linger like when we were at school level for the so-called old ways, because some of us are traditional and also set in our ways, and we struggle to have a growth mindset. And we know that we are still developing and we are trying our level best, but not everybody has access to good sound to boost my internet. And once again, it shows now that it's unstable, and I hope we are still connected if we check in with one another. So briefly, we can be very challenged in communication, and we can Google the 7 C's of communication. It needs to be clear, and connectivity online remains a challenge for their clearness. It needs to be concise, and we need to be able to grasp the content well and check in with one another, whether we convey the right information and the message is clear. Then we can also struggle with this online threats of hacking and so forth. To control, to manage that is a mission itself. And it also can decrease your morale, especially if we can't see one another. Am I valued? Am I appreciated? Smile, they say, the world will smile with you. So sometimes that physical touch, that body language and reading thereof is also a challenge in our work productivity and efficiency. And it affects our focus. I have seen many people, the camera being switched on with very cardinal, important meetings, where various important decisions have to be made, and they multitask, dependent on your interests, your personality, your commitment, and the video is switched off. We are on mute. I can walk around, as we saw at the beginning of COVID, with my PJs. Or we are so clever, we devise this corporate thing that you hang over. And then you listen to the child being online schooling, or you say, bring me some water here behind the scenes, or cooking here on the side. So I hope we are not guilty of such today. These are just few brief indicators of how our work of life can be directly and indirectly influenced. And obviously, if our mood is not intact, when you are sick yourself physically, or your loved ones, and you have to take care of them or nurture them, or even when they're not sick. You are now compounded when we were under lockdown, in seclusion. We can work on each other's nerves, and things not going the way it should, according to our expectations, can give us anxiety and depression. And for the first time forever in my life, in the history of mental health, has anxiety surpassed depression as the #1 leading mental health cause and disease due to the pandemic.
That is very interesting, what you just said. We'll get back to that in a second. But Mauriza, based on what Edwina has just mentioned, in terms of, how it depends on the employee in terms of how they adapt to this new normal, and working from home and their productivity. And you mentioned that, your employees have been working from home. What has productivity been like since, you've implemented that switch?
I must admit, we haven't had an indication that productivity has gone down. Be it the resilience of our employees, or be it with the technological support we've provided them. You just mentioned now, Edwina, in terms of the frustration going offline while you're talking, you're struggling with network. We've really very quickly in the beginning ensured that we are still active and able to serve our customers, like I said earlier. And that's why that simulation plan and the business continuation management plan in any organization is of a very critical nature. So what we tried to do in terms of to forge, productivity was really to get a sense of togetherness. And that is why, irrespective of your busy meetings online, your back-to-backs, hardly you get up from your chair from 8 to 10 or 8 to 12. This is my life, In between, we have built in some online counseling sessions with very great themes that allowed the employee to tap into that. And since you're working from home, your loved ones can also all tap into that, So we had live programs on meditation, yoga, mental health. Because we're part of a Pan-African organization, we are in 14 countries on the continent. All of us could leverage of the quality of professional help that were out there and available for the Old Mutual Group countrywide and continental-wide. So we were able to really stimulate wellness, well-being, balance for better throughout this entire transition. And mind you, it's not just managers and executives are not, outside of that zone. Every one of us as employees felt the demand of working from home and still being able to be productive. One of the things I do want to mention, though, is that this company is 101 years old. So we've weathered many seasons, right? We've gone through even the Great Depression. So our structured approach and our current workflow and workplace culture was one of the things that kept us going. It's consistent, and it's, what is expected of you every day. It's just a matter of now transitioning that from your work office to your home office. And we've equipped every employee working from home with the data and the laptops, whatever they needed to do their work. And for that, I'm actually very grateful. I say this with great pride and really with a sense of humility, that I'm very fortunate that I have been part of an organization that is so well prepared in terms of delivering its promise to serve its customers.
Well, Edwina, back to you. Are there, other measures beyond, remote working that employers can introduce to support the employees to remain productive? And how effective, would it be to implement these, in an effort to prevent abuse? Because sometimes when employers aren't, monitored or supervised, it could bring down the levels of productivity.
Thank you, Nina and Mauriza. It is about leadership. So we live with all sorts of human beings, and they respond, they are motivated, they are activated by different approaches. And we know, especially the younger generation, also do not wish to be micromanaged. And many of the younger generation, they are independent workers, and they are inclined to flexi time, which is also a foreign concept for us, especially in Namibia, that we ought to adjust to. And then it depends on the leader you are. Do you believe, as we've heard about micromanagement? Do you believe in empowering the employees in terms of their persona, coaching? And we should also balance the concept of hard skills versus soft skills. Hard skills are your natural and learned inclination, abilities, aptitude, skills to do the actual physical work and to do it sufficiently. Soft skills are supportive of that in terms of the way you carry yourself psychologically, your demeanor, your outlook on life, your sense of responsibility and discipline and self-governance, and how you interact with the world, your environment, and that also are inclusive of your fellow colleagues, as well as any other human in terms of your circle. So it is a focus of the world of work in terms of we cannot only focus on hardcore skills, what is needed in the human being to do the actual physical job and get it done. We also have realized, fortunately and unfortunately with COVID-19, that the human factor, the human resource is still relevant and cardinal, and not only the robots and the systems can do the job. So I say unfortunately because mental health did become fashionable. Now, fashion is a trend, and a trend is not sustainable. We want it to be built into our culture and our character in terms of the organization as well as the community at large as a collective. We are collective suffering, we are collective achieving. So we are accountable for the self and we are accountable for one another. That includes the organization that is the river of life and the sustenance of the organization that we all feed off, that we have a responsibility towards. We also have a responsibility in terms of a nation. You mentioned, Mauriza, the depression, that socio-economically, as a collective, what is our common goal and vision? What do we build towards? What is our purpose? And it has been proven psychologically that it gives you more health, general health, especially mental health, because you have that sense of humanity and you have that sense of belonging and you have that sense of giving and being rewarded soft skills wise. It builds your character, it builds your wisdom, intelligence and knowledge, as we are sharing here, picking each other's brains on this platform today. So if I may propose is that we really do it because we believe in it and that we have faith that mental health interventions apply and it's relevant and necessary for the general common health of the collective, and not only because it's fashionable or it is now required by the pandemic and its consequences. Yet it is to move away from threat, that is basic primary health care, towards wellness, to be our optimal selves, and as Mauriza said, to be proud of the product we are individually and collectively, inclusive of the organization and the Namibian society, and being an international citizen, trying to strive towards being virtuous.
Thank you, Edwina. Mauriza, I just want you to quickly respond on something Edwina mentioned, which was the increase in mental health issues and how anxiety now has overtaken depression. And from what you've said prior, your organization is doing an incredible job in supporting its employees. But have you seen this to be true, that there has been an increase, in either depression or anxiety amongst employees, more than ever before?
Absolutely. And what we've done is we've done surveys. We need to give the employee a voice. It's no use you have these wonderful platforms, but nobody is logging on, or people think that the theme is not relevant. So what we do is we do regular surveys, and we have just gotten our feedback from a recent survey once again that dealt with employee wellness and employee connectedness. So we have very specific themes that we focus on. And it clearly indicates that people felt the brunt of COVID-19 mentally, emotionally, and it's got to do with the trauma that they were facing, of not just being locked down, but having COVID or being exposed or having watched somebody close to them die. So, and then also, once again, as we all know, we do make provision for you to go on leave. And if you come back, it's back to business. So that whole transition from this is my reality, I'm not ready yet to cope, to go back, and I am obliged to go back because I need to care for my family. It's been a constant contrast for many of us as individuals and employees and employers. So the work is not over yet. I think it's a long-term journey. It's not something we will be able to resolve immediately. It is a reality. But what I'm trying to say is we encourage our line managers to know your people, know what they're going through, spend time with them. Some of the groups, for example, had meetings every morning. We call it virtual coffee session, just a check-in. You're required to put on your lens, and we want to see how you're really doing. Even if you're on your colors, how are you really doing? And employee line managers also had the obligation to report on a weekly basis. Whenever an employee is not emotionally well, we would encourage them to meet up with the counselors, and we will follow up in terms of that support. Like I said, at no charge. You can go see a counselor as many times as you want with your family. Secondly, we needed to know whenever somebody has been infected by COVID or lost a loved one. So the check-in reports has become part of who you are as a manager and a leader, like Edwina rightly said. So we have the information, we have our finger on the pulse, and it's not from a business-driven point of view. It's from an employee proposition, employee wellness point of view, to say without our employees, there's no Old Mutual. And not just our employees, healthy and wealthy employees. So yes, definitely, we have been impacted. And I would like to add, I know we're going to come to this question a little later, but we've been very firm from the beginning in terms of how we adjusted our policies to make provision and align it to government regulations, COVID regulations. So we aligned internal policies, and we were very strict about it. I know many people resisted working from home and not really understanding it initially, but we had the responsibility to do so very quickly. And as of date, if I look at the statistics for August, for example, we had 154 active cases out of over 900 employees. And we do believe it's because of the strong policies we've put in place and the hygiene practices, with the supplying of care packs. We supply care packs, here in June, vitamin boosters for every staff member with a mask and a sanitizer. We were really pushing this message very hard, but from a point of saying, we care about you. We want you to be well. We want you to be healthy because we need you, not just in our company, but in our country and for our economy and our sustenance. So that has been the culture for us. And I'm very happy to say those statistics, even though it's not ideal, we can say that most of our employees were really, really protected against the impact.
That's awesome. Edwina, back to you. And what you mentioned earlier about, the increase in anxiety in individuals. And I don't know if you agree with these sentiments, but I think we sort of in the beginning overlooked the impact that COVID-19 would have on a community population, in the beginning. And I'm not sure why we did that, but perhaps you can sort of, unpack that for us, how we were supposed to have this conversation about the psychological impact of COVID-19 a long time ago. Do you agree with that? And also, why do you think we didn't have this conversation, conversations such as these much sooner?
I believe it's dependent on our history, our heritage, and our culture, that the physical and the physical presentation of matters are more at the forehand. And we have learned to mask. We have learned to mask our problems because we do not wish to be vulnerable or weak and be termed as psycho or as a nutcase, as people readily say. So we have learned in terms of developing that we ought to be very controlled and meet expectations no matter what. So we also then, at the end of the day, avoided stigmatization, and we didn't realize the great impact it had on our mental health. We were just pushing through with good reason to sort out the physical in terms of hospital beds, vaccinations, masks, and so forth, because we know the infrastructure and the resources are limited in our society. So of course it is a focus point. And we had the scenario in terms of the COVID-19 regulations that we forgot, the focus was so amplified on COVID-19 that we forgot about all the many psychosocial issues that we are faced with. For example, statistics and proof are there that with COVID-19 and the lockdown measures, that gender-based violence, for example, escalated, and all sorts of psychosocial challenges. Like I said, our mood disorders also escalated because people became discouraged, distressed in terms of anxiety and depression, being under lockdown, and also our movement was limited in terms of business, in terms of connectivity, as we heard. We had to now become fearful of visiting our loved ones physically, and we were used to that as well. So I think the ripple effect was slower in terms of recognizing that, because we were already not naturally inclined to mental emotional health. It wasn't a priority, if we are honest, as it should have been. And I believe that COVID-19 was an amplifier, a pressure cooker on the already mental, emotional, psychosocial challenges that we had as a collective and individually. Now you realize, okay, I am anxiety prone person, or I am more introverted prone. As more, I'm thankful for that, messages of mental health and psychoeducation and information are spread by many stakeholders in the collective, which is admirable, and I applaud that and I acknowledge that, and we are grateful for it as mental health workers. It builds our professions and our general well-being in terms of mental health, in general health. Your mood is your mental health immune system. So we ought to combine the physical immune system and boost it and nurture it with a healthy lifestyle, and also regulating our stress levels, especially in the corporate world of work. that is still production orientated, as it should be, because we are building. It is labor driven, blood, sweat, as I always say, with good reason, yet everything in balance, and we should act out of discernment and try to also nurture, boost our mental health, regulating ourselves, governing ourselves and our mental general health also in our careers, our intelligence in the practice and the exercise thereof, in our creativity and our achievement. So I would say then that we need to boost ourselves in terms of self-care, checking in with the self and checking in as a collective. And our natural environment, COVID-19 taught us as well. I think Old Mutual is also inclined and cognizant of that. We have learned that we need to take care of Mother Earth as well, in every sense of the word.
Thank you so much, Edwina. Mauriza, throughout our conversation, you've mentioned, sort of touched on the wellness programs that are offered to your employees. You've spoken about yoga, meditation, childcare programs, therapy. I mean, the list goes on. But I just want you to take us through these programs, each one of them, and not only how exactly it works, but also how your employees have responded to this help that you're offering them.
Okay, and so as I mentioned earlier, we've actually, as a Old Mutual Limited group across the continent, we've contracted a company that provided the holistic package to us. So the themes were crafted based on what specifically transpired during a particular month. And employees would beforehand get a list of those themes. So you would get the appointment in your diary, on your calendar when you switch your laptop on, already booked for you, but it's obviously up to you to decide, do I want to attend? It's got to do with topics like combating stress and burnout. Let's talk vaccinations, trauma and death. We were also hosted vaccine coffee sessions where our experts in the company across the regions, like I said, and medical doctors employed by Old Mutual would have conversations with employees about vaccines, how safe it is, especially during that time. We spoke about loss and mortality and grief and pandemic fatigue. So we would get employees logging on across the continent, and we would get feedback in terms of Namibian participation. We would, most of what we do through our internal communication channels are being tracked, so we get great results to see a percentage of employees that participated. We also have local engagements run by our wellness team, and where we could, like today, discuss with cameras on, and you can make comments. And that's where we see some of the great themes coming out, which we then use for follow-up sessions to be able to ensure that we do address the stuff that employees want us to address. Just to give you an indication, we are currently busy planning for the return to office. This has got to do with how do we prepare for life after COVID? That's where we are at now. So it's got to do with the training and the awareness sessions. We are currently busy planning to reintegrate employees to work post-coronavirus. So there, once again, we will have topics like mass trauma, as we know what we just faced now during the third wave. And we will contextualize the return. How will that impact my life, my routine that I've gotten used to now almost for 2 years, driving to school again, logging in back into the office setting. Also the challenges and the stigma associated with COVID. We just spoke about this, Edwina. There is discrimination against people. For example, if I say I had COVID, people would like, oh, shift may be away because, oh, maybe she can still give it to me. So those are the in-depth topics that we tackle to ensure we deal with the false beliefs, we bring the facts across properly, and we equipped our employees already for reintegration, the debriefing after COVID. We know it's still a long journey, but from the results we've obtained and the conversations we had, we now know this is where the mutualites are. We call ourselves mutualites. Mutualites are in a mindset of debriefing. What now after this? And so that is an exciting new switch in the dial for us. And we look forward to what is going to come from that and those conversations.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mauriza. Edwina, the reality is that not all employers have occupational health programs such as the Old Mutual does. On top of that, they may not, offer support to their employees at all. But what should employers be doing, even on the most minimal of scales?
Mauriza has touched on it. Thank you, Nina. First of all, legislation governs us to review, to align our policies, as well as the departments that we can be operational in terms of aligning ourselves, looking after general health, mental health, inclusive, and a healthy lifestyle. And it is true, I work with various companies that a few esteemed Namibian-based companies have actually a wellness department and not only a human resources department. From there onwards, the checking in process is very important, as Mauriza said. In terms of people have complained a lot, the tradition of checking in has lapsed before COVID-19, that we do not get hospital visits. I'm talking about before the pandemic. We are called to only receive work inquiries. I trust you are well. The emails start like that. I believe you are okay. How are you today? And without listening, even the general public, we do that to one another. We are forever strained and overextended. So that true, sincere, as we are having today, open conversations and making the employee feel that you matter and your health and your well-being matter as being conversed. And then also the basics that we can do is training. It can be the lay employee being trained to train others, train the trainer concepts, or it can also be that any employee can be trained to be a coach. We have done this in the Namibian prison system, where fellow inmates had to volunteer to be a coach. Also a leader in that sense, to support the team and to make the team smaller in order for case management. It is humanly impossible to get around to everybody and everything. And obviously, I love what I hear, Mauriza, in terms of the technology and the systems being in place. Many big corporate employees complained about access and access control. You are expected to log on and do your work, yet you do not have authority as you have physically being on board in the office. And there is obviously the lapse in communication or the way of communication that had to be adjusted to. So we also need training, I think, not only in terms of mental health, but more training also in terms of things such as technology and how relevant it is and what is available to equip the self also as an employee to cope and to sustain yourself as an employee and to be relevant and optimally functioning as an employee. So time management, for example, is even for myself a challenge. It's so basic, yet it remains a challenge for us to integrate, as we've heard, all sorts of things while being overwhelmed and overextended. Then also case management, data, collection. Knowledge is indeed power, it's wisdom. So tracking our every move, not only the challenges and for problem solving, also for preventative measures and also for reaffirming ourselves and our potential and our abilities and celebrating individually and as a collective our achievements. That is a great motivator to propel us for change and for growth. And growth mindset coaching and development. And also, we do not train the brain enough. We bombard it with information, and we have learned to filter as we are sitting on this platform as well. Do we really attend and do we exercise our minds? That is part of the engineering of the mind, to plan and willfully apply our minds and all the knowledge that we have. So many of us learned effectively, learning methods and strategies, and that is proper listening skills, attention, focus, as the youngsters say. That type of training and coaching is also important. And we know conflict management and what is emotional intelligence, and what are things like hard skills that I referred to. And the integration, Mauriza, I love the integration and the reintegration of the knowledge we already have, to refresh that as well and revisit and not assume only that we know and accumulate more knowledge. I think that is a wise approach in terms of occupational health, and clear communication should be, we say in psychology, if it's not written, as a scientist, it doesn't exist. To have a more scientific approach in terms of our occupational health in the workspace.
Thank you so much, Edwina. The other thing I wanted to ask, as I mentioned, not all employees are privileged enough to have, to be in an organization where there are programs that cater to help them, maneuver through COVID-19 and all of what it brings with. And this could be the passing of a colleague and yourself getting very ill, hospitalized, and having to go back to work. There's so many things. But I want to know what, for an employee that now the onus is on yourself to get yourself back to 100%. What can they do to keep their psychological and mental health intact and healthy? You mentioned self-care practices earlier. What does self-care look like in this context specifically? Because I think sometimes, the phrase self-care has become this airy-fairy thing where it's just all about, doing luxurious things for yourself. But this is actually a very serious matter. So in this context, when you say self-care, just unpack that for us, please.
Thank you for the floor, beautiful ladies. Self-awareness. How do you devise, plan, and execute it and resolve if you don't know what's happening? Study the self, check in with yourself. And many people struggle to pinpoint their feelings. And feelings goes with the body and the body senses. So become aware. I'm restless. What does that mean? I'm overwhelmed, or I'm panicky. We even read online on Google what is panic and anxiety, yet we still don't recognize it because we don't self-study. We do not breathe. It has been quite a challenge to breathe with COVID-19 and the mask as well. I'm happy to see we are maskless physically, mentally, and emotionally to a good extent. So self-care is mindfulness. That's positive psychology. To remain calm, and it's also regulating your energy. If it's high energy, it's not necessarily only good. High energy, we call it, it can even be very aggressive. So to regulate that energy, and it's basic health style measures. That includes on your wellness. Is there a balance in terms of your work life? Life is part of work. Work is part. As the saying goes, do I live to work or do I work to live? Both are equally important. So some of us lean towards being workaholics, and some of us lean towards being leisureaholics of all sorts. The balance we struggle to maintain. So first self-awareness, then it comes with understanding, checking it from all angles, getting some insight and perspective, being honest with yourself on what track are you, and tracing your tracks and your steps, as you said earlier on. And then what am I going to do about it? And devise smart goals for yourself. What is a priority in terms of yourself? Time out and also invest in those. So music is a beautiful, quick method to be mindful and calm yourself. Breathing, it's as simple. All of us don't breathe as we are under the radar on this platform properly, because the mind is the cognitions, the way of thinking, and to be operative now in the moment. We do not pay attention enough to our breathing and movement. And movement is not only Karate Kid styles. It's also walking, actually getting up and moving, and for your body systems to get moving as well. And nothingness is also somethingness in psychology. Being mindful. I need to rest and get a good night's rest. For us ladies, some beauty sleep as well. It's nurturing. And we need company, even if you are more introverted. Good company. We say you must choose your inner circle wisely, and the quality of time. I can be at home with my children and I can be on the phone. My daughter is clever enough to say, "Mommy," and if I respond yes, she say, "Look me in the eyes." Then she knows I'm listening. So do we really see ourselves, Nina, to your question? And do we treat ourselves and others with due diligence and respect, and honor our bodies, what we put inside, and how we put it inside? Like, I'm thirsty right now in this moment in time. The bottle of water stands on the table, yet we are preoccupied. So it's also a matter of priorities and realizing that we must be holistically in the whole brain approach, more in balance and attentive of many aspects of our being and our presence in our roles and positions that varies a lot today, and in relation to our environment in the larger collective. I think mindfulness in the rhetoric, the discourse, the story, the message of self-care and caring for one another as a collective, and discipline and accountability. And you don't need to move in extremes. To do the bare minimum or to do it excessively is unhealthy. You also don't need to be an expert and perfect in the self-care. We all grew up with candles. You can light a candle. to calm down. So the brain registers in terms of mindfulness, information, calming yourself down, regulating yourself, or inspiring yourself in being zestful and full of vitality and energy in balance through our senses. What we feel on the inner, what we feel here in terms of hugs, we have this virtual hugs. It's not my love language, doesn't do it for me. What we hear, like I said, with music and what we see, how do we invest in the self? Do we read or do we glance? Do we really study and are we eager to learn? And do we really listen, not to respond, but to invest in the self and the common good? And what do we taste? No comfort eating, healthy eating. And what do we smell? It's dependent on how our brains are devised and what speaks to us individually, how we have been created. And that determines, like I said, our self-love languages and for one another as we speak English in order to communicate while we are conversant in other languages. So what is your self-love language? That's self-care. And prioritize it and do it. That's act, do, work. We don't work on our mental health and self-nurturance and care. And you don't need money to look up into the blue sky, to hear the birds, to massage yourself with petroleum jelly. And it's good for the skin, and the heart, and the soul, and the mind. And you can see I'm very passionate about these matters.
Thank you so much, Edwina, for that elaborate explanation on what self-care is. Mauriza, I know you said you wanted to add onto that. And then just as we round off our discussion, once you're done with that, perhaps you can also tell us, we know that COVID-19 currently has no end in sight. And you mentioned earlier how you're already preparing for post-COVID-19, and we simply don't know, when that will be. So preparation, I guess, is best at this point. But how feasible is your current plans that you've implemented, in terms of wellness programs for your employees? How feasible is your current plan financially? And do you think it can be sustained long-term, not knowing when COVID-19 will come to an end?
Okay, thank you. I was now so super charged by Edwina there. What I wanted to take out of what she said back to the employer's point of view is always remember, what are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing your best self to the table? And that is why it's so important what Edwina said right now, how to love yourself, care for yourself, balance yourself outside of that environment. And bring your best self, your best intellect, your best personality to the corporate table. And that is what your employer obviously has invested into, having you there. But vulnerability at the same time is also welcome, around that table, because that's where we are actually real about who we are and what we're struggling with. Now, back to your next question. Feasibility, preparedness is the name of the game. And as an insurer, we have to adhere to specific requirements in terms of our support towards our customers. So in terms of financial credibility and availability, liquidity, all of that is in place. In terms of supporting our employees, the feasibility, once again, as I mentioned, we plan on a week-to-week basis, bi-weekly basis at certain intervals to ensure that we meet the objectives we've set ourselves out for our employee wellness. So there are specific metrics in place, we are tracking it, we are measuring it, and we give sufficient time for ourselves to go back and rewrite the script so that we know we are prepared for the future. I think the most basic thing we are requesting from our employees, our customers, our community is the simple regulation of wash your hands, wear your mask, keep your 2-meter distance. In Old Mutual, it's 2 meter. Outside of our company, it's 1.5. Keep your 2-meter distance so that we can get together again anytime soon and continue with a life maybe better than we used to know it. I think the objective for us, and we stand with government to say we want to achieve that 60% herd immunity, so that the ones who are not in a position to be vaccinated, maybe due to illness and other issues they have, can be spared that, and the rest of us who are healthy be vaccinated. So that will enable us to have a healthy environment and a community and economy once again. So I hope that wraps it up. I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to mention to you, it's a holistic approach we are taking, but we do our business planning. In fact, we just completed it now for 2022 to 2024, and we are looking forward to what the future holds, provided that each one of us follow the simple hygiene principles set out for us.
Thank you so much, Mauriza. And thank you for your time this morning. And Edwina, you as well. It was an absolute honor to speak to both of you. It was a lovely conversation I had with you. For our participants and our viewers that will be catching this a bit later on, it will be up on the Namibia Media Trust YouTube page in a few days, so you can catch the full conversation there. But from the NMT team and myself, Nina Katangana, it's goodbye for now.
The Ask the Experts platform is a monthly segment that offers an opportunity for Namibian journalists to engage noted experts in one-on-one discussions on the COVID-19 pandemic. Journalists get to pose questions to experts in various sectors to ensure that they are equipped with the necessary information to better inform their readers, listeners, and viewers. COVID-19 is our common enemy. Together, we can defeat it. Proudly brought to you by the Namibia Media Trust and the DW Academy.